I feel your male privilege is a myth. I feel like only white men have that male privilege, and that's what the focus should be on.
Okay, so there's no black male privilege?
No.
So what systemic white male privilege exists today? What rights are afforded, for example, to white males that are not afforded to black males, or to white males not afforded to black females? Let's divide everyone by race and gender at this point.
In regards to like laws and things like that, obviously the laws aren't like, oh, white men get this privilege and blah, 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 blah. So in regards to like technical terms, it says like men, it's laid out by laws really equally. When it comes to the actual systems, there's tons of black men crowding jails for an eighth of weed, while, you know, white men have like weed parties and it's cool and that's their thing, but like black men are automatically arrested for it. So that goes into the whole like police brutality argument, but
the premise was the idea, right, that black men are in prison for an eighth of weed. Do you have any statistical data to prove that black men with nothing more than an eighth of weed go to prison?
I couldn't give you the exact statistics, but there's several accounts of it, and it's not unknown. It's pretty much common sense that blacks are way easily more arrested than white men.
We're trying to deconstruct some of these ideas that people maybe assume are common sense, but are factually inaccurate. Now, the truth is men as a whole are much more likely to be incarcerated than women. Okay. Men as a whole, even white men, get far more harsh sentencing for the same crime as women.
White men are shooting up schools, so I think they should have a harsher punishment.
Well, hold on a second. Black men are shooting each other in record numbers as well. That's not really relevant to the point.
You were asking for the facts, and they're right here.
Let me see.
Okay,
so hold on one second. You said white men are having weed parties, and a black man with an eighth of weed will be incarcerated in a federal prison. So what I have here is your source from the NAACP. Okay, African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. Now, nothing here at all involves behaviors or crimes committed. I'm trying to look for anything in here that relates to black people being sentenced simply for an eighth of weed. So this is from the NAACP. That would be as biased of a source as you could use. So again, the systemic differences we're talking about, you know, men, period, are more likely to be incarcerated than women.
Yeah.
Men are more likely to be physically assaulted than women. First off, this is data. But when we get into the anecdotal that, well, white men tend to have it better because they can walk around and have weed parties, that's not necessarily accurate. So particularly when we're discussing an issue as sensitive as race, gender, and systemic oppression or inequalities, don't you think it's really important that we get that correct and the premise correct before we go off and divide people by these subcategories?
Yeah, but I think there's tons of statistics out there already, and even if you don't want to look up the statistics, it's not hard to see how many black men are in jail at larger rates than white men.
Do black men commit crimes at a higher rate than men?
Definitely not. That's
No.
just not true.
No?
No.
No, so black men do not commit crimes at a higher rate than white males?
No.
Okay. Do you have statistics that would reflect that?
I mean, I'm sure I could look them up, but it's definitely not true. It's because racism is built into the system. That's what the system is built against blacks, and that's what racism is. That's why there are more blacks in prison.
Okay. Well, it seems like we've gotten away from male privilege, now we've gotten to black-white. But I'll go with that if you'd like to. What systematic racism do we have today then in that case?
The system is built against, so it all goes back to slavery. Colored people of color, sorry, have never been...
Careful, colored people, it's people of color. One's racist, one's okay now.
Yes, people of color is the correct term. People of color have never been given an equal opportunity for jobs because after racism was abolished, came segregation and then Jim Crow and separate but equal. So people of color have never been given the same opportunity as white people, which is why it's been built into the system.
Did you go to TCU?
Yes.
Okay. At TCU, do you know if there is any affirmative action, for example, grants exclusively given to people of African American heritage?
The community scholars?
Community scholars, yeah, which is put in place to help get minorities into college.
Right. So so there are grants and scholarships. I think we would agree across this country for minorities. Yeah.
And those wouldn't have to exist if it wasn't the system.
But will we not say that's...
If the system was equal, then those scholarships wouldn't exist, which is why we have to have those scholarships.
So when you say minority, that would be excluding people who are not minorities for this grant or scholarship, correct?
Yes.
Is that discriminatory?
No, because it's fighting against the system of racism.
Well, I'm not asking about the system of racism. I'm asking is, by definition, is that discriminating against groups of people for this grant?
No.
What is the definition of the word discrimination?
Let me look it up.
Okay. I would venture it would be something along the lines of discerning or excluding certain parameters or qualities from a given opportunity.
Unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex.
Okay. So excluding people based on race.
It says unjust or prejudicial.
The point is there's discrimination occurring there. Is there anything like that for white students?
Unjust. That's not unjust because it's making it equal for minorities.
It's making it equal?
Yes, because they don't have an equal chance in our society.
How do they not have an equal chance to get to TCU?
What do you think? We're trying to explain to you right now. What have we been talking about this whole time?
Well, I'm looking at several black people here who've made it to TCU. I guess you're a figment of our imagination. Well, hold on a second. Sorry, you're Asian, so I guess you don't count because there are too many of you on campus. The point is, many of these people disagree. There are more white people in this area of town, and we've gotten away from male privilege. We talked about white privilege versus black privilege. Is not what we're talking about. Or people of color. Is people of color, is that the term you prefer?
Sure.
Well, I don't know. I know some people prefer black, some people prefer people of color. I would like to go back to the idea of male privilege. I still haven't heard a right afforded, or same thing with race. I still haven't heard a right afforded to someone who is a white male, not afforded to, say, a black female. I think that's pivotal if we're going to talk about systemic discrimination.
How many of our presidents have been white and male?
The last one was black.
One out of 45. 1 out of 45.
And I would argue he was terrible.
I would definitely not argue that. I'd argue Obama was one of our best presidents.
Okay. That's fine. And isn't it wonderful you can have that opinion, right? You can have that opinion and I can have my opinion, but wouldn't that be proof that there are no more barriers to entry if a black man made it to the highest office in the land?
There's lots of countries where they elected one minority president and then went all the way back to electing all white presidents. They say they're
Careful, because you're treading on some ground that could make you sound very racist here, and I don't think you're aware of it.
Maryland's not going to come across racist. So.
Some of what's been said here kind of racist.
Your white opinion of racism doesn't
racism
really
is
compare.
That's kind of that's a little I'm cool with it. That's a little bit racist. Saying your white opinion racism doesn't matter is not reverse racism at all.
No,
it's
not that
racism.
it doesn't matter. It's just it doesn't compare.
But I do find it interesting right here where you just said that your white opinion isn't comparable. I don't. The word comparable is interesting to me. Why would you use that choice of words?
Because what is your understanding of racism in comparison to somebody who's a person of color?
We're both human beings with opinions on an issue.
Yeah, but you play into the system and we're trying to fight against it. So why would...
How would you know that I play into this? How do I play into the system?
You're a conservative Republican. Like, you
don't know anything about me.
You're sitting here saying that male privilege is a myth.
So you just said I am a part of a system which you just declared racist. You said I'm an active part in a racist system. That's a really terrible thing to say about somebody.
Well, is it untrue?
Yes.
No.
Then prove it.
Well, you want me to prove? Okay, you want me to disprove your prejudicial statement based on my race? Let me give you my best shot. Okay. I'm actually a French Canadian, or an English Canadian who was raised in French. Let me talk to you about a little bit about discrimination. We're actually not allowed to attend English schools. We're not allowed to open a restaurant with an English sign if there's an apostrophe S. Where I grew up, they thought I was learning disabled as an English Canadian, being forced to go to public Catholic schools at a Protestant English-speaking Canadian, and they thought I was learning disabled until the 4th grade. I lived in an 82 Datsun for several months as I tried to make something of myself and dropped out of college and moved to the United States when I was 18 years old. So I certainly wouldn't say that I'm someone who's been raised in the lap of white American Republican privilege. By the way, there are no Republicans in Quebec. There are only liberals and liberal separatists.
None of what you said had to do with racism or anything. It
had to do with discrimination, with prejudice.
Okay.
I would say there's an English-speaking...
But you're still a white man in this society, so you're good. Your privilege is safe.
I would say this, and you're not going to like this, but I would say white-speaking English Canadian, being raised in French Canada, yes, would face much more systemic oppression than you here on college campus.
Really? So it's easier being you, a white person in America, than me? half-white person in America.
You're a half-white person in America? No, I was talking about my upbringing because you said you're playing into the system. You're a white male conservative Republican.
Yeah, I don't care about
What if
the
I were
background.
what if I were a white male Democrat? What if I were a transgender
Then I would hope that you
Democrat?
would be fighting the system.
What system?
And trying to
We've said
change
this-
it.
what system?
The systematic racism
What's
in
systematic
America.
racism? I just need one example of systematic
Police
racism.
brutality.
Okay, police brutality. The system that you say I play into here proactively in America. Police brutality is an example of systemic discrimination, white male privilege.
Yes.
How so?
Because black men are killed at traffic stops, black women included. I mean, there are unjust killings in jail that mysteriously, these men kill young black men and then walk free. Like, your life and your privilege is fine, but black people are dying.
So you believe that it's okay, it's legal to kill an innocent black male and it's happening in record numbers
Yes.
because we're white?
Not because you're white, but because the system is racist.
What if I were to tell you that statistically that's untrue?
Then I would want to know the statistic.
Yeah, what if I tell you that actually white males are more likely to be shot by police?
Okay, why wasn't the Florida shooter shot dead then?
Well, we're getting into the anecdotal.
Okay.
So statistically, empirical data would say that actually white males are more likely to be shot by the police.
Okay. But I just completely disagree with that, and I don't know where your statistic is coming from.
Okay. If you disagree with the statistics, we have them up on the website. I think it's horrible if anyone is shot, an innocent person
Yeah.
shot by the police.
No,
I think we
totally.
use better training with a lot of police officers. De-escalation,
Absolutely.
I think that should be used with white or black people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing, if I may, just as I'm sure you would probably be more defensive or less capable of having a civil dialogue with someone if they said, well, you can't possibly understand because you're a black woman, you don't know anything about this. I'm sure right away you might say, well, hold on, what do you mean by that? Coming into a conversation with someone where you don't have empirical data or evidence, I presented some, you've disagreed with some, you haven't presented much of your own, but saying that someone's opinion simply isn't comparable because they're a white male, A, is not a valid argument. I hope that's not one that's taught as okay in college, and it's also not something that's going to convert anyone to your way of thinking. You know, the idea is to change my mind. I will tell you, I appreciate you sitting down and doing it, but that is probably the least effective way to enter a conversation if you're looking to change someone's mind, to say you're wrong or you don't know because you're a white male. So I would hope that moving forward that maybe you might reconsider your tact, because you seem like you seem very much like a nice lady. I don't think you're aware of that, but it shuts down dialogue before it begins as opposed to encouraging it. Mm-hmm.
White males are not oppressed.
So you just said white men can't know what it's like to be oppressed. Do you believe that as an emphatic, factual statement, that there are no white men in this country who could know what it's like to be oppressed, or maybe haven't had some hard breaks?
They've had hard times, but they're definitely not oppressed.
I appreciate it. I would disagree. I think everyone has privilege in different facets, and I think on campus, women and people of minority people have privilege that the average white male here probably doesn't.
What privileges do we have that they don't?
Scholarships, grants, the ability to
They
shout
have-
people down, tell
I
them they don't
earned-
have a
no,
right
no,
to an
no.
opinion because
No.
they're a white male.
No.
I would never even dream of telling either of you that your
No,
opinion
wait.
isn't valid because
Stop.
you're a
Stop.
woman,
Stop talking.
you're black.
Stop talking.
No, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to tell me to stop talking. Sorry. If I were to do that, you'd say that that's white
me
male
explain-
privilege.
let me
So I appreciate it.
explain.
The conversation is kind of over. It's not going
No,
anywhere.
it's not over,
Thank you.
actually.
It's over.
How are
Thank
we-
you.
How are we given scholarships that all these other people didn't have the right to get? We earned that. We were in the top of our class. That's how we earned those scholarships. We were smart. We were smarter than them. That's how we earned them.
Well, then
We
what?
weren't given it 'cause we're
Then let's
women
just
or 'cause
great.
we're minorities.
I think everyone on here is on board with scholarships for the smartest people in any class.
You just said that's
Male,
one way we have privilege.
male, female, black, or white. I don't think race or sex should even come into the equation. So good, we agree. We found common ground. Thank you very much.